Hey, Lukan. So I'm your peer reviewer this week, and just how I'll do it throughout this review is I'll first talk about your first antithetical speech was when you were against pornography in the United States, and then I'll pick apart your second speech, which was when you were for pornography not being suppressed in the United States, and then I'll kind of compare both of them throughout it and towards the end of it as well. So we'll just begin by talking about your first speech when you were against pornography. And first of all, man, I loved your intro. I thought the way that you just drew in the crowd of two or three, and you drew us in, man. It was amazing. We both did our speeches this week over the pornography subject, and I actually read on that same story in my research as well, and I thought it was just very effective. I just couldn't figure out how to use it or how to fit it in my speech, and I think you did a phenomenal job of being able to incorporate it into the speech and not really disrupting from any of the other info. In fact, you built it around it because I felt like you did the similar thing as me as far as against pornography, painting pornography in a negative light and giving it its evil characteristics, so to speak, that it really rightfully has. And I think you did an awesome job throughout the speech, just throwing on more facts and throwing on more research about how pornography is just really crumbling our society. And I thought that was really well done. I loved the intro. I loved it. Just the tone of your voice, as far as the delivery, the tone of your voice right from the beginning set the tone from the rest of the speech, and it just gave a saddening tone, which is very effective if you use it correctly, like you did in this first speech, as far as how pornography is just negatively affecting so many aspects of our lives. It really is unbelievable how it affects our society in such a way, and yet we're so complacent about it and actually enjoying it most of society. So it was good just hearing your sources and how you formed this first speech. And as far as content, I thought it was good. The structural logic, I thought, again, fantastic intro. The only thing really in this first speech that I thought you could maybe work on is just the sources and how you use the sources as far as introducing them to the audience. We'll talk about that a little more later on, but just the sources and how you signal to the audience that you're using a source. For example, that story right in the beginning, you mentioned it was a story. It was from some kind of research, but you didn't really go into detail as far as where that was found from or what article that was written in. So that could definitely increase your credibility if you would have done that. And just one more thing about the first speech and the second speech is your vocal crutches dramatically decreased from your first speech. I reviewed your first speech, and comparing that to this one is just a huge night and day difference. So great job on decreasing the vocal crutches. It was just a really fluent and flowing speech that I thought you pronunciated perfectly. And that's another one of your strengths is just pronunciating words so the audience isn't confused as to what you're saying. You're very calm when you give your speech, which is a big positive with the way you go about your speeches. So great job with those things. And as far as the second speech is concerned, I found it very interesting the way the approach that you took it. I took mine more legally speaking, and as far as our rights to get involved with pornography if we choose to do so. But I really enjoyed seeing your perspective of it as far as the social aspect of it and how it really increases some positive areas in our lives, our sexual lives, and possibly protecting us from unseen circumstances such as unplanned pregnancy or something like that. So great job with that. You definitely were more daring than I was. I couldn't figure out a way to twist my argument as far as for pornography in the way that you did. So great job with that. And again, your intro was really awesome. It's different than the first one, but again, that's totally cool. That's fine. That's great. And I loved how you did it because you tied us in with humor this time. Instead of a sad story, you tied us in with humor. And I think that's really effective as you go on giving speeches and things like that. As far as humor being, it opens up the crowd. I feel like it's really, really awesome when it actually works and people laugh. When people don't laugh, it's a little more nerve wracking, and the speech could go really bad after that. But as long as you keep doing what you're doing, just sliding that humor in there ever so slightly was really effective. It just set the tone for the rest of the speech. Not that it was funny, but we were more apt to listening to what you had to say. Um, so great job with that, and again with your delivery was awesome as far as the vocal crutches. Your pronunciation was great again, and your tone of voice same similar as the first speech. Um, yeah, again, the only thing that I would really try to work on as constructive criticism goes is signaling your sources, like we talked about in the first one. An example that I stuck out of your speech was when you said Mr. Dickerson said this and this and this. As far as the audience goes, we don't really know who Mr. Dickerson is, so it could be your grandpa for all we know. So maybe you just give their first name and where they wrote their research in, like what article, what journal, that those type of things, just to really build upon your credibility as you go forth in speeches and whatever else you end up doing. One last thing I'd like to touch on is the second speech. You used the word probably at one point in the speech, and just as far as argumentative speeches go, I try to tend to stick away from those gray area words where you're not quite sure you know what you're talking about. It kind of just signals to the audience, well, maybe he doesn't know what he's talking about fully, and we're not gonna listen as intently because of that. So just try to eliminate that and bump up the confidence, especially in argumentative speeches, is really effective when you do that. As far as your confidence, it really comes across powerfully to the audience if you're confident or not. We can tell. So just think about that as you go on. But overall, I loved your speeches. I love your perspectives, and your sources really seem to build upon each other throughout both of them. So again, great job. It was awesome watching your speeches this semester, dude. Thank you.